Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Matthew. Thank you so much for joining. Today, I'm going to continue on with the theme that I talked about in the last video. That is the actual payment volume or the transfer value that occurs on the Bitcoin network. All right, so here we have the daily transfer value of Bitcoins on the network going back all the way to 2010 in dollar terms. Now, of course, the original native unit to Bitcoin is the Satoshi, actually, which is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin didn't really have a price or was being discovered to have a price in the market, there's not much going on here if you look at it in dollar terms. Now, this is in $1 billion worth of Bitcoin that are transferring. And notice the title I have here, Daily Value of Transfers Originated. I'll explain a little bit more of what that means in TradFi, traditional Federal Reserve central bank speak, just in a moment. But as far as it relates to Bitcoin, it should be quite clear. Basically, however many Bitcoins flow across the network on any given day, if you convert that value into dollars, you're going to get this value. So obviously the most activity as far as billions dollars worth of activity happened here in the 2021 bull. And you can see we had days, the peak here, let's see if I catch it, November 2021, $36 billion worth of Bitcoin transferred on the day. I believe there was a couple days with billion-dollar transactions themselves, just one transaction, which I believe there was a quote from Nick Szabo saying such transactions almost tempt fate because we continue to set new records with Bitcoin. Of course, we're off from these highs, but it's just incredible to think that $1 billion worth of value can occur on the Bitcoin network anywhere across the globe from one transaction. All right. So I'm going to reset the zoom here. And this data is from Coinmetrics, very good data. Of course, this is their adjusted transfer value. So they remove things. For example, if there are wallet consolidations among known entities like exchanges, they remove that value, even though, of course, there is value in doing that. They try to isolate what would be considered real or adjusted network value that happens between peers on the network. So the height as of today, the height again was 36 and a half billion dollars worth of Bitcoin on one single day. Now, you remember in the last video I had mentioned PayPal often, and I said with PayPal, over the course of a year, now in 2024, they do about $1.5 trillion worth of payment volume, $1.5 trillion worth of payment volume. And I said Bitcoin is actually similar. So in order to find that value for Bitcoin, I'm just simply going to take a rolling trailing 12-month sum of all the daily transfer values. And you're getting a black line that's pretty wavy, but it's giving me on the right-hand axis right now. Okay. So here I mentioned that Bitcoin got over $5 trillion, and it did on a trailing 12-month basis in 2022. But now, as of right now, we can see we're on the upswing again, and we're at, look at the black line now, $1.6 trillion in payment value, transfer value originated. In February 2024, $1.6 trillion, $1,600 billion, that's $1.6 trillion. So this is actually a more interesting curve just to look at the longevity of how the Bitcoin transfers can work. Of course, I could draw trend lines through this, as you know I like to do, but let's just look at the curve. Of course, it's wavy, just like prices, as this asset is being discovered across the world. In 2018, it boosted up to $1 trillion, trailing 12-month value. Then it fell to 500 billion. Then again, huge boom, up over $5.5 trillion, and then it fell down to 1.3 trillion, and we're on the upswing again. Just want to take a moment to remind you that this show is brought to you by Trezor, home of the original Bitcoin hardware wallet. Established in 2012, Trezor means business in Bitcoin security and functionality. Whether you're protecting your identity with Tor or using Trezor Suite to smoothly send or receive a Bitcoin transaction, Trezor gives you full control of your coins in a transparent and fully open source manner, both on the hardware and software level. So head on over to Trezor.io to grab your Trezor Safe 3 with the secure element, Model T with a touchscreen, or the original Trezor 1, as well as a ton of available accessories to back up your keys and keep your coins safe. We're proud to be associated with Trezor this year. Everybody clearly believes that this is going to be outsurpassed very soon, this $5.5 trillion trailing 12-month run rate for value transferred on the Bitcoin network. So this is how it looks. All right, $1.5 trillion of Bitcoin trading on a trailing 12-month basis. PayPal does the same, but remember the difference between PayPal and Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is actual base money. It's money that any individual on the network can control fully. They can hold the keys. It can be their sovereign wealth outside of any financial institution. That's why base money is often called outside money. It's outside the financial institution, just like gold, just like silver. Bitcoin is the same. Bitcoin is base money, very comparable to gold and silver from the olden days, outside the financial system. Of course, you can bring it into the financial system. You can have Bitcoin on exchanges. You can have Bitcoin in ETFs, Grayscale, BlackRock, Fidelity, all the rest. But as a native unit, Bitcoin is outside the financial system. It's outside money. And so the value of this is going to be really interesting to see how this compares with current base money today, which is purely fiat. And what is that? That's what I publish every quarter, the monetary base. $30 trillion worth, a little bit less at the moment, $30 trillion worth of monetary base money across the world. That is fiat currency, dollars, euros, yen, yuan, Indian rupees, pound sterling. A little less than $30 trillion at the moment. But if you look at the Fed's balance sheet, it's about $5.5 trillion worth of base money. The money that sloshes through there every day and every year, they call, remember I said I was going to come back to this, value of transfers originated. Okay, value of transfers originated. And how much does the Fed do of fiat currency, fiat actual dollars that the Federal Reserve controls, bank reserve, base money, US dollars? $3 trillion a day. $3 trillion a day. So where Bitcoin has done $5.5 trillion a year, now it's doing $1.6 trillion a year. The Federal Reserve does $3 trillion a day on Fedwire. And what does that equate to per year? $1 quadrillion. And so now, going back to what I mentioned earlier, value of transfers originated. What is that term? Well, this is TradFi speak for how much the Fed actually does in transfers each day, each month, each year. All right, under something that's called Fedwire. So remember, Bitcoin is comparable to base money. We don't have gold and silver as a fundamental component of the financial system anymore. It's purely fiat, purely dollars, purely euros, purely yen, purely yuan, purely pound sterling, Indian rupees. There is no attachment to gold or silver. But still, we can calculate that value. As I told you, it's $30 trillion, a little bit less, of value that is accrued in these instruments. All right, actual dollars, euros, yen that is printed, 30 trillion is the balance. But how much is the payment volume? All right. If we look simply at the Federal Reserve, it's about $5.5 trillion worth of monetary base, actual dollars that the Federal Reserve controls. Bank reserves and physical currency, $5.5 trillion is the monetary base. But what does Fedwire, the Federal Reserve's transfer mechanism, what do they say is the value of transfers originated? It's actually $3 trillion a day. So where Bitcoin was up to $5.5 trillion a year in 2022, and now it's about $1.6 trillion a year currently, the Federal Reserve does 1/5 1,000 trillion dollars a year. $3 trillion a day, $1,000 trillion a year, or $1 quadrillion worth of payment volume per year. So now we can start to see where Bitcoin actually fits in, the size that it fits in relative to the financial system. $1.6 trillion a year compared with the Federal Reserve's $1,000 trillion a year. So the Bitcoin network is about 1/1000th the size in terms of payment volume as the Federal Reserve, or 0.1%. The transfer value of base money Bitcoins is 1/1000th the size of the transfer value of base money dollars. Only dollars, according to the Federal Reserve Fedwire reports. Okay. And that, of course, Bitcoin is comparable with dollars, euros, yen, yuan. And so it's only dollars that I just quoted there, that quadrillion dollars worth of payments that flow through the Federal Reserve via Fedwire per year. You still got to factor in euros, yen, yuan, as controlled as that is, pound sterling, Indian rupees, Brazilian real, so on and so forth. So that is where Bitcoin fits in the grand scheme of things. It's absolutely not PayPal. It's growing. It's growing very steadily, very rapidly. And if you think these are really wild swings, of course, again, they are as Bitcoin is being adopted. But let's put the log right on the right-hand axis. Now we're on log scale on the right. Log scale on the right seems eerily reminiscent of how the Bitcoin price looks on log scale. Looks a bit smoother. All right, and that's base 100. Every level up is 100 times higher than the rest. So that is how the Bitcoin network looks today, slowly but surely growing in annual payment volume. Been as high as 5 trillion, reverting to as low as 1.3 trillion, but growing again. But that is compared, what Bitcoin is up against is the Federal Reserve and many other central banks, which the Federal Reserve alone does $1 quadrillion a year of payment volume. Thanks for watching.